cmpradio.net, the voice of Chester.
Good afternoon, beautiful community. Welcome to WWJD, another special interview segment. As promised, I have our Congresswoman, Mary Gay Scanlon. How are you, Congresswoman?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, thank you so much for coming. As you know, WWJD, what we like to do, we have a word of the week every week. And this week's word was contiguous, sharing a common border, touching. Just thinking about that word, what comes to mind?
What comes to mind is that's how I got to Congress. In 2018, I was not thinking about running for Congress, but our Pennsylvania Supreme Court came down with a decision saying that Pennsylvania's congressional districts had been so badly gerrymandered that they had to be redrawn. Yeah. And I lived in the middle of the district, 7th district, which was known as Goofy Kicking Donald, because it was not contiguous. It stretched halfway across the state and up and down and looked like a cartoon character, but it had been drawn that way to create a reliably Republican voting district by the state legislature. So once the Supreme Court said, no, we have to redraw, and when we redraw, the districts, they have to be compact and contiguous. Yeah. So you can't have, pieces up here and things looking like snakes and lizards and everything. And that's when Delaware County finally got put back together as being the bulk of what's now the 5th congressional district, with a little bit of Montgomery County and a little bit of Philadelphia drawn in, because they each have to have about 750,000 people in them. Awesome. So that's contiguous, has been top of mind with respect to gerrymandering and voter efforts.
Awesome. So jumping right into it, way before politics, way before anything, who is Mary Gay Scanlon?
Who is Mary Gay Scanlon? I mean, before going to Congress, I was a lawyer for 35 years. Wow. Had always wanted to be a lawyer. My dad was a lawyer, community kind of based lawyer. So grew up with seeing my dad and a couple uncles and a grandfather as well, helping folks in our communities, whether helping, the local hospital or, the folks with the business down the street who were having troubles. It was a slightly different era, so he got paid in barter often as much as dollars and stuff. So grew up seeing that. My mom was a teacher, so I was kind of torn between teaching and law for a long time, but ended up going into law and then started doing education law. Yeah. So have always kind of been drawn to the idea of trying to help solve problems and come up with solutions, and not fretting about the things you don't have control over, but trying to do your best for your community where you are.
What kind of kid were you?
I was a rule follower. I was the oldest. The oldest always follows the rules. Yeah. The youngest breaks the rules. But I love to read. I grew up in a small town that probably had more cows than people. So, reading was just a way to stretch the imagination and experience other things and other
Absolutely.
lives beyond a very rural area. So that was important. My folks divorced and my mom passed away when I was a teenager. So I did some parenting of my younger sisters.
How many
So there was
sisters?
that. Two younger sisters.
Okay.
Two younger sisters.
Any brothers?
No brothers.
All
No
girls.
brothers. Yeah, which was helpful because particularly when I was growing up, it was just at the start really of the feminist movement and such. And Title IX happened while I was in high school. So I didn't grow up playing a lot of sports in a team basis, although my family was real athletic. But that's been a big part of my life. That I didn't have some of those opportunities to do team sports in high school.
So you said mom and dad divorced, then mom passed away.
Yep.
Sorry to hear that. How was that? How did that change you?
Well, in a lot of ways, I had to grow up earlier. Had to take more responsibility for myself and my younger sisters. Got a bank account sooner because I would help buy the family groceries, learned to drive as soon as I was eligible to help transport family stuff around.
Absolutely.
So some of those things.
Now, at
making
this
sure there
time, was
family.
dad still in the picture?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And, how did that affect your sisters? How was that hard for you, being able to raise them? I can only imagine having to be that mother figure at the same time grieving yourself.
Well, a combination of that and just, a lot of people do it. A lot of, families go through a lot, but,
Absolutely.
Trying to grow up yourself while you're sort of responsible for some other folks growing up. So that, it impacts everybody differently. But I had to grow up fast.
What will be one of your fondest childhood memories?
Fondest childhood memories. There were a lot. We did a lot of things as a family. Like I said, we did a lot of outdoor sports and that kind of thing. I think one of the funniest ones that relates back to something we talked about when I went off to college, my family came to visit me on Easter and brought an Easter basket, and there were books in it. And we thought that was normal.
Yeah.
And my roommate was like, no, it's supposed to be chocolate and stuff like that. It's like, no, books are good.
Yeah.
So, just growing up in kind of a tight community, I had, large Catholic family, so lots and lots and lots of cousins. And particularly in the summer, we'd be in and out of each other's houses all the time. The doors were never locked, and, the screen door slams, and you always had a lot of folks around.
Yeah.
So that was great.
What book are you reading right now?
What book am I reading right now? I read so much, like briefing papers
Yeah.
and stuff like that. It's hard to get into a book. I started one, I got away for a weekend, and I started one that was just like a main family story
Yeah.
or something. But I did see that one of the townships around here is doing a one book, one town thing.
Yeah.
Deacon King Kong by James McBride, and I've had that sitting on my bedside table for probably a year now, so I figure that's going to be the push that gets me over the end
Awesome.
on that.
Growing up, when did you? Not growing up. When did you decide that you wanted to get into politics?
I never decided I wanted to get into politics.
Nobody does, right?
No, never decided I wanted to get into politics. When my kids were little, I took time off from work after the third one was born and stayed home with the kids for a couple years and became very involved in our local, home and school PTA stuff. And that was at a time when there was a construction project going on in the local school, and it was not going well, and we weren't getting good information from the administration about what was really going on. And it came down to the community being told that school would reopen after Labor Day.
Yeah.
And we'd been watching the construction for months, and it was pretty clear it wasn't. So that was the year I was going to be head of home and school. So one weekend I took a camera and I went over to the school and I hopped over the fence and I took pictures. and then took them to the PTA and said, look, they're telling us the school is going to open in a week and a half. The classrooms, I mean, nothing is ready. You know, it's still an open construction site, so we need to do something about this. So we, started lobbying the district for better information. Eventually, the kids did end up getting bused about 45 minutes away for a whole school year because the school wasn't ready. And the next cycle, people asked me to run for school board.
Awesome.
So just kind of that start of advocacy and then learning enough about the issues. I was also working for an education nonprofit at the time, so I knew a fair amount about education law.
Nice. Speaking of children, who is Mary Gay Scanlon, the mother?
Oh, well, I have 3 great kids. They are all out of the house right now. The eldest just sent us an email this week that she's getting married. So I have our eldest she's the only one who's followed the family tradition of being a lawyer, but she's just moved to Boston and she's going to be
awesome
working there. I've got
congratulations on the engagement.
It's very exciting. Lovely young man. The second one works in New York. He works for an agency that helps immigrants here in this country have a credit rating. So if someone comes here for a long-term stay, they want to buy a car or a house, they don't have a credit rating in this country because they've lived somewhere else. So he's with a company that helps provide that transition work.
Awesome.
And the youngest, the creative one, he's out in LA working on being a screenwriter.
Wow.
So it's really interesting to hear what he's doing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Do they come home often? Do you guys hang out a lot still?
I mean, it's obviously harder and harder as they scatter around the country, but that's my favorite time.
Yeah.
Because when they're all home under the roof, you can go to sleep and turn off the phone, and you're not worried about anything. Yeah. But yeah, they're great. They're each different in their own way, and it's so exciting to see them, carve out their own space.
Mary Gay Scanlon, the wife. Mm-hmm. Who is she?
Well, I am blessed. I just celebrated last week. Last week? No, this week. Sorry, time flies. Celebrated my 36th anniversary with my husband.
Congratulations.
Yes. And cannot imagine a better life partner. He's always taken me very seriously when I said I think I can do it all, be a mom and work and everything else. He's been very supportive. Like to talk, on our wedding day, we went whitewater rafting before the ceremony. And, now we navigate the shoals of life together. So
30,
great.
Was it 36 you said?
Yep.
36 years, right? That's an awesome number. What was the one thing that kept you guys consistent? What was the one thing that always got you through?
I think it's shared values. That always does it. We've both, family's very important to us. Community service is very important to us. Strong interest in civics.
Yeah.
Those kind of things go together. We both enjoy the outdoors and being fit. So, and dogs. Must love dogs.
I had a chance to meet him at Carol Kazim's event.
Okay.
And I noticed how he was just so chill and just laid back. He let you do your thing, and he knew what you were there for, and that was awesome. It's always good to have a partner that understands the ramifications of the work that we do.
Could not do this job without that because it's
taxing.
a 24/7 thing.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of years when I was holding down the home front, and now I have to be in D.C. Half to 2/3 of the time, and he gets to hold down the home front. So, couldn't do it without him.
That's awesome. Was there ever a time? Well, let me ask you this first. What were some of the things that you had to overcome in life? What was one of the hardest things that you had to overcome, if any?
Mm-hmm. Well, we talked a little bit about being a teenager and having my mom pass away.
Yeah.
That's tough because it probably happened at a time, you go head to head with your mom a little bit when you're a teenager and never, getting to work through all of that. That's kind of tough. Otherwise, I've been pretty fortunate in life, and I've been able to work in a profession that I love. being a lawyer, and not just a lawyer to make money, but a lawyer whose job was to help people.
Yeah.
So being able to combine doing what I want to do and being of service and helping solve problems, and being able to have that be a career, that feels pretty fortunate. So, when your kids are little and you get no sleep,
Yeah.
and every day is a challenge, and there are big blocks of it I don't think I'll ever remember.
Yeah.
I mean, there are different things like that, but times that are tough. I mean, it's currently a tough time in government because there are folks there who aren't interested in governing.
Yeah.
And that's scary for the country, I think.
Very.
Yeah.
Is there a favorite quote, favorite Bible verse, or favorite something that always got you through that you would say to yourself, that you chant to yourself? One that I always like to share is from Nelson Mandela, who said, "There's no passion to be found in playing small and settling for a life less than the one you're capable of living."
Mm-hmm.
So was there any quotes or any sayings that you would chant to yourself during those hard days, the hard campaign trail days when you're drained and you've been up and...
I mean, the campaign trail days when you're out there meeting people and hearing what they're interested in, I
Yeah.
love that. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the best part of it, getting to know different people and hear what makes them tick and trying to fit it all together. For a Bible verse, it's probably Micah 6:8.
Okay.
Which is do justice, love mercy, walk humbly before God.
Yeah.
My husband's much more overtly religious than I am. I'm more of the faith in action,
Yeah.
kind of works kind of faith. So I tend to be in action more.
What would you say would be your greatest strength as well as your greatest weakness?
Greatest strength, greatest weakness. I mean, greatest strength is probably just being hardworking and trying to dig into things and produce results. Democracy's not for sissies.
Yeah.
I've been working in the voting rights arena now for a couple decades, and you see the different things that can go wrong, but you study hard and you learn it and you try to figure out a path forward. Greatest weakness? I said I like meeting people and learning about different things. Sometimes I can get a little scattershot and try to do too much.
Yeah.
But it's been great to just work with folks throughout the community who have great ideas
Awesome.
and be able to try to support that.
What are three things, if you're reelected, what are three things that you would like to see change here in our community?
Mm-hmm. Well, kind of the things that have propelled me into this, they have to do with access. It has to do with access to the ballot, making sure that people's votes count and they aren't marginalized because of the census or because of gerrymandering or because of other things like that. So making sure that people's voices are heard. I mean, it's really basic, but we're having some problems with that nationally right now. So access to the ballot, I've been a legal services lawyer for a long time, so making sure that people have access to justice, whether it's on the criminal justice side or whether it's on the civil justice side. So, we had an eviction moratorium, but if you don't know about it, and if you go into court and you don't know about it, that's not going to help you. So, again, making sure people have the tools that they need to be successful. When you asked about specific to the district, there's so much going on in Chester right now. It feels like there's an energy that hasn't been here in a long time. So being able to work with folks who can make things happen. We've had some successes with getting more jobs at the shipyard, and there's a lot of work happening around the life sciences fields in Philly and beyond, and making sure that people here have the skills to get those jobs. So working with Delaware County Community College, with the apprenticeship programs, to make sure that people know there's a path forward. There's a path to getting a good job that's not Pennsylvania minimum wage, it's not $15 minimum wage, it's actual family supporting wage. So that kind of thing I think is really important.
How big is reentry to you?
I've worked on a lot of different reentry issues, spent several years working with the federal court in Philadelphia, where a couple judges set up a program for reentry where returning citizens would meet with them every other week and talk about what trouble they were having reentering. And the judges quickly figured out that there were a lot of legal issues. People couldn't get their license back. They were having trouble getting an apartment. They were having trouble, signing up for health care. So I worked with a group to provide free legal counsel to folks. So I've seen those kind of issues, and certainly have worked with folks getting their records cleared, doing some of these clinics that Legal Aid of Southeastern Pennsylvania works on. And there's a group in Philly that works on as well. And then passing legislation at the federal level. There's been some at the state level, but also passing legislation at the federal level to make sure that people can get reentry.
Absolutely. Mental health.
I mean, that's something that's plaguing the whole country, it seems. I mean, after a pandemic that disrupted so much. But it's really, really important here in Chester and in a lot of our communities, particularly poorer communities that haven't had the resources they need, where there's been gun violence, as we've seen, and a lot of trauma, and that hasn't been addressed. And so that's certainly, I'm on all the bills having to do with providing more funding and such. We were able to pass some this summer in connection with this fairly limited gun safety bill, but all we could get through the Senate.
Yeah.
So we do need to do that, but just the awareness of it, I think the fact that we do have such profound needs is really important, and we seem to be doing a better job with that in society. My daughter for a while was teaching trauma-informed coaching. You think about, maybe a typical football coach who says, get out there, I want you to do this and that, and you're talking to someone who's dealt with an abusive family situation or some other kind of trauma, and that's going to punch all the wrong buttons.
Absolutely.
One of the other big areas that we've been dealing with is mental health with policing. I guess 2.5 years ago, I co-sponsored a bill that we're still trying to get through with Ayanna Presley from Massachusetts and Katie Porter from California, called the Mental Health Justice Act. And the idea is to provide more resources to 911 call centers so that when a call comes in for someone with a mental health problem, you send mental health professionals rather than police, who aren't necessarily going to have the training or the tools to deal with that situation. And we introduced that bill, I think it was about 3 weeks before Walter Wallace was killed in Philadelphia, because it's not a new issue. We got to stop doing the same thing over and over.
Absolutely.
So that was tragic and hit close to home, because it was the precise thing we were trying to deal with that bill. But we're continuing to try to push that through, hoping that we can do that when we go back next week. But on a concrete front, on the home front, Delaware County Emergency Services has bought into this idea. And last year they said, we have a proposal, we want to have a mobile mental health van here in Delaware County connected to the emergency services so we can send that out when it's needed. And we were able to get $650,000 through the budget last year, and they're going to have that mental health van up and running in Delaware County starting in the fall. So lots to be done, but
education.
That's been kind of a lifelong thing.
Yep.
Half my family is educators, the other half is lawyers. But I worked for a decade for the Education Law Center of Pennsylvania. One of the things I worked on there was that a group of parents and families from Chester Upland School District retained that public interest law firm and Delaware County Legal Aid, at the time it was called, to help get access to public education for kids in Chester Upland School District. They were attending the schools, but they weren't getting the special ed services they needed.
Wow.
So I worked at that agency, as I said, for a decade, dealing with a range of issues, but basically about getting access to good public education for kids. Really drank the Kool-Aid, and then I went and I ran for my own school district where I live in Delaware County. So I served on that school district for 2 terms, plus another couple years where they kept putting me on committees. But I mean, public education has always been so important to our country, to having educated citizens, to helping people get the leg up they need to be successful in life. So,
Absolutely.
huge fan, and having had the opportunity to work with school districts across the Commonwealth, knowing the inequities that we see here, where school district funding varies so widely and it's completely unrelated to the needs in a particular district. So supporting whatever we can in Congress, whether it's funding to renovate older buildings that haven't been renovated. I mean, Philadelphia has an average age of about 60 years old for buildings. I know there's an effort to renovate the high school and some other buildings here in Chester Upland. So making sure that the facilities are up to speed, that the kids have access to good teachers and to technology and everything else. I mean, we can't have these divisions and expect to have a functioning country.
With so many needs, along with wants, can the Chester voters count on you? Can we count on you to follow through? Can we count on you to be present? Can we count on you to do what you say that you're going to do?
I would hope so. I mean, I'd like to think I've demonstrated that so far. Our office is in Chester, and that was a statement about wanting to be accessible to this community, and also to put down a marker that Chester's on the move, and there are good things that are going to happen here, and to be supportive there.
I always tell people that Chester has all the right pieces.
It does.
Literally, we have all the right pieces to change the world right here in our city. If the moment that we learn how to connect those pieces and stop screenshotting, everybody has a screenshot of the big picture. But until we have the same picture, everyone is holding that same picture. The moment we do that, we can change the world. Is that the same view you see?
I think so. I mean, I go back 30 some odd years. That was when I worked for the public interest shop that did that. I mean, since that time, I've provided free legal services to Chester East Side Ministries on things they were working on, to Delco United and some of the groups that were providing funding for violence interruption programs at the hospital. Since I've been in office, we've worked with the various health agencies, first trying to make sure we had testing and COVID vaccinations available, but then also making sure there's a continuum of care. I mean, seeing the different pieces and talking with folks in Chester. First of all, it's really clear that Chester is not a place where someone can parachute in and tell people what to do.
Absolutely.
I mean, people here have grit and they have ideas, and sometimes maybe we need help to all get on the same page, but to provide the support for the ideas that are bubbling up here.
Absolutely.
And it's really interesting to see kind of younger generation coming to the fore with ideas, sometimes bringing them back home from outside, which I think is helpful because we all need some outside perspective sometimes.
Absolutely.
But, kind of showing up and listening to people and hearing what they need, that's what we're trying to do. One of the big projects we're working on, not big projects, but one of the projects we're working on right now is I've been hearing from seniors and folks with disabilities that they can't get into the post office because there's steps at the post office, and there's no way to get in there if you have a walker or a wheelchair or something. So we started looking at it. I brought in an architect to look at it, and they said, yeah, you could do a ramp here. This is what you do. You put it here, and this is what it would take. So we've been in a battle of words with the Postal Service. Apparently there's a law that says anything built after 1968 doesn't have to be made accessible. It gets grandfathered in. It's like, you mean to tell me that this place hasn't been updated since it was built in 1937? So I've been enlisting help from the committees that control funding for the post offices. We actually got them to have a hearing in Philadelphia earlier this week. And the chairman of that committee has now written with me to the Postal Service trying to get funding, not just for Chester, but for other similar places. And it's just, I mean, right now it feels like a matter of racial justice because there are post offices in this area that were built the same year that have lifts and have ramps, but they're not Chester. So this has become kind of a cause as far as I'm concerned. So we're working on that.
Definitely need to take care of our elderly, moms and dads and grandmothers and grandfathers, our elderly period. I didn't notice that That's new to me. So
It's a beautiful older building, but it does have this flaw.
one thing that we're really big here at WWJD and CMP Radio is giving out our flowers. It stems from a statistic that we once read that said most men don't receive their first bouquet of flowers until their funeral.
Oh.
Yeah. So from then, we just started giving out flowers because it was important, verbal flowers, physical flowers. However, just to show love. So I want to take this time to give you your flowers and thank you for your service to the community and all the work that you do. Coming to an end, again, can the community expect to see you more? I know one of the things that always comes up is we're Rishi, and I tell people all the time, politics is hard work. You know, once you're in office, we know the work. Can we count on you to be for the people and not for Washington? Most change happens at this level, right? We know that. And just like I told Dave, you know, the first step to correcting a problem is first admitting that we had one. We know that politics can be dirty, right? We know that it's rough there. You're going there and you have all these ideas and all this great stuff. And of course, you have so many people that's like, yeah, we hear you, Mary, but look, this is the narrative that we want to push, and sometimes it can be hard. But can we count on you to continue to fight?
I mean, I said before, I never intended to run for Congress.
Yeah.
Absolutely, the community can count on me to fight for Chester, to fight for everyone across this region.
Absolutely.
That's why I'm there.
Yeah.
This was not some grand design. It was nothing I set out to do, but it is an opportunity to continue the service that I've been doing in our community, you know, on behalf of kids, on behalf of families, on behalf of voters. That's why I'm there, and if I can't do that, then I won't stay there, but I do see that there's a path forward. You know, they say in Congress there are workhorses and show ponies.
Yeah.
I tend towards the workhorse side of the equation. I'm not a grand orator. I don't, you know, excel at Twitter. But I have dug in and been able to pass legislation to help veterans, to help kids, to help families, to help with addiction crisis. We've been able to bring a lot of resources to this community. And certainly when I'm not in DC, I'm here in Chester and across the county. I mean, we were talking before about the fact that it's 750,000 people that I have to represent, but I'm in Chester 2, 3, 4 times a week, out in the community listening to hear what people are interested in.
You brought up something that was very important, addiction.
Yeah.
There's a part of Philadelphia that I'm sure you know of
Kensington.
that is worse than a third world country. I've been there one time. Somebody told a friend of mine, we went up there, and I haven't been back since. I honestly couldn't believe that this was a place in America. What are your plans to correct that issue?
Well, obviously it's not a small or an easy issue. We have been passing a lot of legislation to funnel money towards our community organizations, and as you said, it's often, you know, the folks that are closest to the community that are able to do the most. There is the AIDS Care Center in Chester. We were able to get them, I think, $1 million grant to expand their services. I mean, they started out working explicitly with folks who had AIDS, but they've expanded their care over the years to also deal with opioid addiction issues. We've got a bill that helps grandparents, and even before I went to Congress, I had kind of a subspecialty in helping grandparents get custody of grandchildren because their parents were unavailable, either because of addiction or because they'd gone to jail or something. So it is a problem that impacts, you know, the whole community, the whole family. So trying to work on that. It's been a tough time to be in Congress and find bipartisan support for things because things have been so polarized. But one thing I was able to help lead 2 years ago was a fix to the Victims of Crime Act, VOCA. VOCA has a funding source that so many of our agencies here locally get funding from. And that has to do with gun violence, it has to do with opioid addiction, it has to do with any number of things that have to do with people who are victims of crime and how you provide them with support. Because of a technical glitch, those funds were drying up. And so we had a bill that would fix it, but it had to get through the Judiciary Committee, which is where I sit, and the ranking Republican member of that committee had basically sworn he wasn't going to let anything go through. That's Jim Jordan from Ohio. He's kind of notorious. Yes. So my job was to go out and find other Republicans who would sign on to this bill so we could get it to the House floor. And we did. We got it there last summer and got it signed into law, got it through the Senate so that that funding could start to flow again. So it funds domestic abuse agencies, it funds gun violence prevention groups, it funds opioid addiction programs.
And how is the tracking with the funding? Are we tracking the progress of the funding? Are we tracking that the people that we're trusting with this funding, that they're doing everything they're supposed to be doing?
I mean, that goes through different levels. I mean, I guess it depends on what you're trying to measure. This is usually going through state agencies to local nonprofits. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you can track by outcomes or you can track by, is the money going explicitly where it's supposed to? Yeah. I mean, there are auditing functions that do that. Yep. And I mentioned the grant to the AIDS Care Agency earlier. When we put in those community project funding grants, there's an explicit provision that if you get one, you're going to be subject to auditing. So trying to make sure that those tax dollars are spent in the way that they're intended and for the best possible
purposes. It's very
purposes.
important. Awesome. Yeah. Is there anything that you would like to say to the voters, the young men and women that's watching now?
I think just that it is really, really important that people vote. Their votes do matter. We've seen so many close races across the Commonwealth and here locally, decided on 1 or 2 votes. So your voices really do count. We're seeing big changes in who gets elected, particularly in Delaware County in this region. So it's a real opportunity to be part of solutions. Yeah. I'd urge them to look at who the candidates are and see who best aligns with what they believe and where they think our country should go.
And for the audience of WWJD, you guys I don't go into the Republican and Democrat stuff. That is not my job here. My job is to bring out the absolute best in people that I sit down with. So if you are watching, why didn't he ask this or why didn't he ask that? It's because I just wanted people to get to know Mary Gay Scanlon, the Congresswoman, the mother, the wife, the community member, because that's what we should base our votes off of, right? Who you are as a person and what kind of job you can do, right? We want to know those things too. But I know that politics can get dirty and stuff, and we have enough of that in the world. So thank you so much for allowing me to interview you, sitting down. This was live. Not too many people are comfortable with that.
It's fine.
So thank you so much. Thank you all for watching and tuning in. Until next time, we love you. We see you later. Make sure you guys tune in to cmpradio.net for all our shows.
Thank you so much.